Welcome back to AlgoBot, the channel where we break down automated trading strategies for MetaTrader 5 in plain, practical English. I'm your host at AlgoBot, and today we're exploring an expert advisor called Anchored VWAP Band Reclaim. This is an intraday mean reversion approach that leans against overstretched moves and looks for price to reclaim its way back toward a session-anchored VWAP. Along the way, you'll learn how it blends a volume-weighted average price, deviation bands, an RSI momentum filter, and a candlestick rejection into one structured set of rules. Remember, this is educational content only and not financial advice. Let's get into it. Let's start with the big picture. Anchored VWAP Band Reclaim is an intraday, mean reversion scalping strategy. Rather than chasing trends, it waits for price to become stretched away from fair value and then looks for it to reclaim that value. The anchor for fair value here is the session-anchored volume-weighted average price, or VWAP. This is the same benchmark that large institutional desks often measure their fills against, and it is rebuilt fresh from the start of each trading day. Around that VWAP, the strategy plots upper and lower deviation bands. These bands are based on the volume-weighted standard deviation of price during the session, so they automatically widen when the day is volatile and narrow when it is calm. When price pushes well outside one of these bands, the strategy considers it overextended. Three building blocks work together here. First, the VWAP and its bands define value and the edges of the normal range. Second, a 14-period RSI acts as a momentum filter, helping confirm that a move has lost steam. Third, a candlestick rejection, a pin bar-style candle with a long wick, provides the price action confirmation that buyers or sellers have stepped back in. In terms of market, the natural home for this approach is a liquid instrument such as a major foreign exchange pair like EURist, or a stock index such as US 500 or US 100, on lower time frames from 1 minute up to 15 minutes. That is where anchored VWAP reversion behavior tends to show up most clearly. Who is this style suited for, educationally speaking? It is built for the trader who is curious about systematic, rules-based mean reversion and wants to study how a value anchor, momentum, and price action can be combined into one method. As always, trading involves risk, and losses are a normal part of any strategy. Now let's walk through exactly how the strategy makes its decisions. Everything happens on the close of each new bar, so the rules only evaluate completed candles, never a half-formed one. First, the strategy updates its session-anchored VWAP. For every closed bar, it takes the typical price, the average of the high, low, and close, and weights it by that bar's volume. From these running totals, it computes the VWAP and the volume-weighted standard deviation, then places the upper band at the VWAP plus a multiple of that deviation and the lower band the same distance below. By default, that multiple, the band multiple parameter, is 2. The strategy also waits until at least 8 bars have anchored the session, set by min session bars, so the VWAP has settled before any trade is considered. For a long setup, 3 things must align. The just closed candle's low must pierce below the lower band, but its close must reclaim back above that band. The lower wick must be at least the WickBodyRatio times the candle body, which by default means the wick is as long as the body or longer, a clear rejection. And the RSI must be at or below the oversold level, 35 by default, showing that momentum was exhausted to the downside. A short setup is the mirror image. The candle's high pierces above the upper band. The close falls back below it. The upper wick is at least the WickBodyRatio times the body, and the RSI is at or above the overbought level of 65. Exits are fixed and structural. For a long, the stop loss is placed 1 ATR buffer below the rejection wick's low, the point where the idea would be proven wrong. The distance from entry to that stop becomes the risk, and the take profit is set at a reward-risk multiple of that distance, 1.5 times by default. The short side mirrors this above the high. Only one position per magic number is held at a time, so each trade is fully managed by its own stop and target. The strategy also skips new entries when the spread is wider than the max spread points limit. Let's look at the actual MQL5 code running inside the expert advisor. At the top are the input parameters, and they map one-to-one with the strategy's settings. BandMult sets how many standard deviations wide the bands sit, defaulting to 2. RSI period is 14, with the oversold and overbought thresholds at 35 and 65. WickBodyRatio defaults to 1, ATR period to 14, the ATR-SL buffer to 1/2, and RewardRisk to 1.5. Now the long block. The Boolean long reject checks 3 conditions joined together. The candle low is below the lower band. The close is back above the lower band. And the lower wick is at least the wick body ratio times the body floor. If that is true and the RSI is at or below the oversold input, the code reads the ask price as the entry, sets the stop 1 buffer below the candle's low, measures the risk, and computes the target as entry plus reward risk times that risk. It then calls trade.buy with those stop and target levels. The short block is the exact mirror. The Boolean short reject checks that the candle high is above the upper band, the close is back below it, and the upper wick is long enough. If that holds, and the RSI is at or above the overbought input, the code takes the bid as entry, sets the stop 1 buffer above the high, and places the target below at the same reward risk multiple before calling trade.sell. Clean, symmetrical, and fully rule-based. Let's bring it all to life on the chart. Across the price, you can see 3 plotted lines. The VWAP running through the middle as the session's value anchor, and the upper and lower deviation bands hugging it on either side. Below the price sits the RSI panel, with its oversold level marked at 35 and its overbought level at 65. Watch the opening candles. Price starts gently, sitting close to the VWAP, and then begins to slide lower, candle after candle, drifting down toward the lower band. As it falls, keep one eye on the RSI in the lower panel. It's dropping with price, heading toward that oversold zone. Now look at the key candle. Price pushes down, and its low pierces clean through the lower band, marking a fresh session low. But by the time the candle closes, it has reclaimed back above the band, leaving a long lower wick beneath the body. That long wick is the rejection. It shows that as price stretched below value, buyers stepped back in and pushed it back inside the bands. At that very moment, the RSI has dipped to or below 35, confirming the down move was exhausted. All 3 conditions line up, and the buy entry marker prints. The stop loss sits just below that rejection wick, 1 ATR buffer beyond the low, where the long idea would be proven wrong. The take profit is set above at a reward to risk of 1.5. From here, watch price react. The next candle turns up off the low, and the following ones build a steady climb back toward the VWAP. Price keeps reverting upward until it reaches the take profit target, and the long trade is complete, a clean reclaim of value from below. Now the market doesn't stop there. Price continues higher, candle by candle, and this time it begins to stretch in the opposite direction, pushing up toward, and then beyond, the upper band. Again, follow the RSI as it climbs out of the middle and rises toward the overbought level at 65. Here comes the mirror image setup. A candle drives upward, and its high pierces above the upper band, but the close slips back below it, leaving a long upper wick standing above the body. That upper wick is the rejection on the sell side. Price reached too far above value, and sellers pushed it back inside. At the same time, the RSI has risen to or above 65, confirming the up move had run out of steam. The conditions align, and the sell entry marker prints. For the short, the stop loss sits just above the rejection wick, 1 ATR buffer beyond the high, and the take profit is placed below at the same 1.5 reward to risk. Watch what follows. The next candle rolls over from the high, and price grinds back down, candle after candle, drifting toward the VWAP once more. It continues lower until it reaches the take profit target, and the short trade closes out. Notice the symmetry across both trades. In each case, the strategy waited for price to become stretched beyond a band, demanded a candle that rejected the stretch with a long wick, and required the RSI to confirm that momentum had been exhausted before committing. The entry leaned against the extreme, the stop sat just beyond the wick where the idea would fail, and the target sat a fixed multiple of that risk back toward value. That is the entire rhythm of Anchored VWAP Band Reclaim. Stretch, rejection, confirmation, and a measured move back toward the anchor. Of course, not every setup behaves this cleanly, and in live conditions some trades reach the stop instead. This illustration simply shows the logic the way it is designed to work. So that's a complete walkthrough of the Anchored VWAP Band Reclaim Expert Advisor from MetaTrader 5. We covered how it anchors a VWAP and its deviation bands to each session, how it uses a candlestick rejection and an RSI filter to spot stretched, exhausted moves, and how it manages every trade with a structural stop and a fixed reward-to-risk target. Remember, everything here is for educational purposes only and is not financial advice, a recommendation, or a solicitation. Trading carries real risk, and losses are a normal part of the process. If you found this breakdown helpful, please like the video, leave a comment with the strategy you'd like us to analyze next, and subscribe so you don't miss what's coming. You can find more strategy analyses at www.algobot.live. Past performance does not guarantee future results. Trade responsibly.